You wake up on the cold floor of a windowless stone room, the air thick with the scent of sweat, fear, and something faintly metallic. Perhaps blood, perhaps the remnants of last night. There is no sky, no clock, no name to call your own. Just the iron shackle biting your ankle, the bruises blooming like grotesque flowers across your ribs, and the distant echo of laughter from the main house, laughter that makes your stomach tighten because you've learned what follows. You're 15, though birthdays stopped mattering long ago. Time here is not measured in years, but in bruises, silences, and the number of times you've had to pretend your body is no longer yours. Footsteps approach, slow, heavy, deliberate. You already know who it is, the overseer, and you already know what he's going to say, clean yourself. The master has guests tonight. You know what that means. You always know what that means. This is not a horror story from a distant barbaric past. This was real. It happened. And behind the gleaming myths of ancient Greece, behind democracy, philosophy, and marble statues, was a darkness few dare to speak of. But today we will. Because to understand history, we must confront the cruelty it was built upon. And to understand ourselves, we must ask what parts of this still remain. The first thing you feel is cold. Not just the chill of the stone floor beneath your bare skin, but the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, a silence that coats the room like dust, thick and suffocating. You open your eyes and see nothing familiar. No sunlight, no trees, no village sounds. Just damp walls, the faint glow of a flickering oil lamp, and the iron ring locked around your ankle. Your muscles ache in places you didn't know could hurt, and every breath feels like punishment. But worse than the physical pain is the understanding that this is not a nightmare. This is your life now. You were sold quietly, desperately, by the people who once called you son. Not because they didn't love you, but because hunger makes monsters of even the kindest hearts. One season of drought, one loan too many, and suddenly your childhood becomes a bargaining chip in a transaction sealed with shame. Your father couldn't look you in the eye. Your mother's tears fell silently as the merchant inspected your teeth like livestock. That was years ago. Or was it months? Time doesn't flow here. It pools in corners, stagnant and thick. You learned quickly that the walls do not care. Neither do the men who walk past you like your furniture. What they call service is not something you can explain in words. It is a violation that repeats until your body responds out of routine rather than resistance. But the most painful transformation isn't physical. It's the way your mind fractures, the way your name fades from memory, the way you begin to view yourself, not as a boy enduring suffering, but as an object to be used. You hear the overseer's steps long before he reaches your door, heavy sandals on marble, a rhythm your body has come to fear more than violence itself. He throws a wet cloth at your feet. Clean yourself, he growls. The master has guests tonight. You don't move. Not because you're defiant, but because you're hollow. The thought crosses your mind, if I don't move, maybe I'll disappear. But you always move. Because fear has trained you better than chains ever could. And as you wipe yesterday's bruises from your skin, a deeper truth settles in your chest. Your body may be alive, but something inside you is dying, quietly, relentlessly, day by day. Long before you were chained to a wall or stripped of your name, there was a moment, small, quiet, but irreversible, when your fate was sealed. It didn't happen in a palace or prison. It happened in a village like any other, tucked between olive groves, cradled by hills where people lived hard but honest lives. A place where laughter once echoed between clay walls and the scent of bread and dust filled the air. But survival is fragile. One season of failed crops, one broken leg, one death of a father, and the balance collapses. Your family tried everything. First went the animals, then your mother's earrings, then the iron cooking pot, and then they came for you. The slave merchants arrived like a second harvest, only this time they reaped children. They set up in the village square with their ledgers and silver coins, speaking with the calm cruelty of men who know they'll get what they want. They didn't force anyone. They didn't have to. Desperation is a better weapon than violence. You were 12, small but healthy, and they said your eyes were marketable. You didn't understand the words. You just knew your mother turned away when the man touched your shoulders and said, "This one will fetch a good price in Athens." Your father said nothing at all, not when the chains were clasped around your wrists, not when they marched you away, not even when you screamed his name. That was the last time you saw him. The journey to the city was a blur of heat, dust, and iron. Dozens of boys like you walking in silence. Some cried, most didn't. Crying is a luxury. You learn to keep your eyes down and your mouth shut. You learn that stopping to rest means being kicked, that asking for water means being ignored, that hope is something you must abandon if you want to survive. At night you slept on dirt, chained to stakes like animals. The stars above looked the same as back home, but they offered no comfort. Only the reminder that the world is vast, and you are completely alone in it. By the time the city gates rose before you, you were no longer a son or a child or a person. You were inventory, just another nameless product in a system that turns poverty into profit and children into currency. The slave market in Athens is not hidden, is not. It stands in the open air, woven into the city's rhythms like the scent of olives or the clatter of sandals on stone. No one averts their eyes. No one whispers. It is a theater of human suffering dressed as commerce, and you, barefoot, bruised, and silent, are part of the performance. The first thing that hits you is the sound, a chaos of shouting, bargaining, and the dull thud of hands slapping flesh to test muscle. Then the smell, sweat, oil, blood, urine, fear. Finally the sight. Rows upon rows of bodies arranged not by age or origin but by perceived value. Some are children barely old enough to speak. Some are elderly, their backs bent, their spirits already spent. And everywhere the buyers, robed in fine linen, fingers heavy with rings, move through the aisles like men selecting wine. They laugh, they point, they haggle. You are told to strip. Not because anyone pretends to care about modesty, but because nakedness sells. Then you are rubbed with oil to make your skin glisten, your bruises less noticeable, your body more desirable. You stand silent as the auctioneer begins to speak, not to you but about you, your age, your teeth, your good temperament, your region of origin, your pleasing appearance. The crowd leans in, hands begin to rise. The bidding starts. You feel fingers in your mouth, on your arms, tracing the line of your shoulders. You stare at the ground. You tell yourself this isn't happening, but the coins clink, the voices rise, and the moment your price is settled, you are no longer even hypothetically free. You belong to a man named Lysander. You will not know that name until later. For now, all you see is his face, soft, well-fed, smiling the smile of someone who has just acquired a prized possession. His eyes do not see a child. They see utility status pleasure. You are dragged off the platform, still oiled, still trembling. No one tells you where you're going. No one asks your name. Why would they? Names are for people. You're not a person anymore. You're a product purchased, owned, and branded in memory by the sound of silver changing hands. This is the moment your old life ends, not with violence, but with applause. Lysander's home rises like a temple on the hillside, its white marble glowing in the afternoon sun, columns carved with scenes of gods and heroes. From a distance, it is magnificent. Up close, it is a cage, polished, perfumed, and gilded, but a cage nonetheless. The entrance swallows you whole. Cool air replaces the heat of the street. Incense masks the scent of fear. Inside, everything is beautiful and wrong. Mosaics of smiling deities line the walls. Painted frescoes show noble warriors and divine lovers. Servants glide by in silence, all of them young, all of them beautiful in the way you now understand to be dangerous. You're handed over to Demetrius, the overseer of the household slaves. He was once like you, a boy sold into silence, but now he wields power with practiced precision. His eyes are sharp, his hands calloused from control. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence is enough. As he walks you through the house, he lists the rules without emotion, like reciting a prayer. You will eat when told. You will sleep when told. You will speak only when spoken to. You will never look a free person in the eyes. You will serve without question. That last rule is not metaphor. It is literal. Whatever the master or his guests desire, Demetrius says with a slight smile, you will provide it. You want to run, but you don't. You want to scream, but you won't. Because you already understand the most important rule: resistance brings pain. Your new quarters are in the basement beneath the lavish halls above. Stone walls, a straw mattress, a thin blanket, and a chamber pot. The door has no lock because there is nowhere to go. The walls are thick not for warmth, but to muffle screams. At night, the silence is louder than the day's commands. You share the space with others like you boys of different ages, different stories, all with the same hollow look in their eyes. Some whisper warnings. Others say nothing at all. They don't need to. Their scars speak louder. As you lie on the mattress staring up at the cracked ceiling, you realize the house is more than a prison. It is a machine designed to strip away your identity, your voice, your will, until only obedience remains. And it is already working. They call it a symposium. A gathering of minds, a celebration of philosophy, poetry, politics, where the finest men of Athens recline on couches, sip spiced wine, and debate the nature of truth. That's the myth. That's the version carved in stone and preserved in textbooks. But from where you stand, tray in hand, heart pounding beneath a tunic, meant more to display than to clothe, the reality is something far darker. The room is elegant, glowing with lamplight and ambition. Men speak in smooth, calculated tones, quoting Homer and Socrates, laughing over military campaigns and artistic commissions. Their voices are refined, but their eyes are hungry. As the night deepens and the wine flows, the conversation shifts. Wit becomes cruelty. Philosophy becomes performance. You and the other boys begin to draw attention, not for service, but for spectacle. A guest, gray-haired, heavy with wealth and status, beckons you over. He pats the couch beside him. "Sit," he says gently. "Tell me about your village." His voice is soft, curious. You obey, speaking in fragments where you grew up, what you remember of your mother's cooking. He listens, nodding, his hand resting lightly on your back. Then it moves, downward, firmer. You freeze. The room quiets. All eyes turn toward the unfolding show. You shift away, but his grip tightens. A whisper becomes a laugh. A command becomes an expectation. You try to speak, to say no, but the word does not exist here. Not for you. Your body betrays you, trembling, still obedient. Your soul tries to climb out through your breath to flee the flesh it no longer recognizes. What happens next is not a scene, it's a shattering. Clothing torn, jokes made, applause from the corners. When it's over, you are not sent back to your cell. You are dismissed like a tool set aside after use. In the hallway, your knees buckle. You press your forehead to the cold wall, hoping the stone will steal the memory. It won't. Later in the basement, you lie awake while the others pretend to sleep. No one speaks. They've all had their first night. You now belong to the house in a new way, not as property, but as performance. And in this place of reason and rhetoric, your silence will speak louder than any philosophy. You quickly learn that even in slavery there is a system, a hierarchy not built on merit, but on how much of yourself you're willing to give up or lose. The household is structured like a pyramid of suffering. At the bottom are the newcomers, the unbroken, the frightened, the ones who still flinch when touched or cry at night. They serve the worst guests, the ones who enjoy the struggle, who treat pain as foreplay and resistance as sport. Above them are the compliant, the ones who have learned to smile on command, to flatter without emotion, to anticipate cruelty, and soften its impact by pretending it's not cruelty at all. These slaves eat better. They sleep more, but they pay a different price. They erase themselves to survive. And at the top are the favorites, usually not the strongest or smartest, but the most useful, the most beautiful, the most broken. They are trusted to help prepare others, to teach the new ones how to behave, to explain the unspoken rules that mean the difference between a beating and a meal. You're placed somewhere in the middle, not new, not trusted, not yet invisible. Your body has healed enough to be presentable again, but your mind refuses to settle. You still fight quietly inside, and they hate that. Demetrius notices. You still think you're better than this, he says almost with amusement. You'll learn. He introduces you to Marcus Alexios and Philemon, your cellmates, your teachers in endurance. Marcus arrived a year before you. He tried to escape on his third day. The scars on his back still haven't faded. He walks with a limp now, and his laughter when it comes is always bitter. Alexios is older, hardened by time and beatings. He speaks rarely, but when he does, it's to warn. Never let them see your soul, he tells you. Once they know how to hurt you, they won't stop. And then there's Philemon, barely 14, with the eyes of someone twice his age. He was once the son of a merchant. Then his father lost everything, and he became a gift to pay off debts. He tells you what the special guest's like. He speaks without emotion, like reciting instructions for a machine. You realize the hierarchy isn't just enforced by whips, it's enforced by survival. And the price of moving up is learning to smile through your own erasure. It starts subtly. At first they change your name. Not by force, but with a shrug, as if it's a matter of convenience. Your birth name is too foreign, too long, too barbarian. So they shorten it, smooth its edges, reshape it into something that sounds more pleasing to Greek ears. You're corrected when you use your own name until you stop using it altogether. Then comes the language. You're forbidden from speaking in your native tongue. If you do, you're punished not severely, just enough to make it hurt. A slap, a meal withheld, a long stare from Demetrius that promises worse. So you stop speaking unless spoken to. Then they strip your customs, your habits, your identity. You're given new clothing, new routines, new gods. You eat their food, recite their prayers, mimic their manners. You learn to bow a certain way, to pour wine in a single smooth motion, to lower your gaze at just the right angle. These seem like small things, but they're not. They're tools, refinements designed to chisel away who you were until nothing remains but what they find useful. You used to dream in your native language. Now you dream in silence. The part of you that resisted is still there, but it's harder to find each day. Sometimes you look in a polished amphora and don't recognize the face reflected back. You're thinner, yes, older. But it's more than that. There's a stillness behind your eyes, a vacancy you used to see only in the broken ones. One night you try to hum a lullaby your mother used to sing. The melody stumbles on your tongue. You can't remember the second verse. You wonder if you ever really knew it. Philemon says this is normal. They don't need to kill you, he whispers. They just need to make you forget you were ever alive. You nod, but the words lodge deep in your chest. This isn't survival. This is erasure by repetition. And yet part of you still counts, still notices the days, still remembers the smell of mountain air after rain, still traces the sound of your father's voice in your mind. That part is fading, but it isn't gone. Not yet. And in a place designed to unmake you, even the act of remembering becomes a quiet rebellion. The guests who visit Lysander's house are the most respected men in Athens, politicians, philosophers, poets, generals. They arrive in chariots robed in fine linens, their voices soft and educated, their gestures elegant. They speak of justice and beauty, of virtue and the soul. They quote Plato, discuss democracy, and toast to the greatness of their city. But when the doors close and the wine flows, their masks slip with ease. You watch them closely now, not with fear, but with a detached curiosity. Because you've come to understand the real theater is not what happens in the symposiums, but the contradiction between what they say and what they do. There's Dionysius, a senator famous for speeches about fairness and reform. In public, he argues for citizens' rights. In private, he demands the youngest boys and delights in humiliating them. Character is shaped by hardship, he says moments before he strikes a trembling slave across the face for not kneeling fast enough. Then, Cleomenes, a merchant whose donations fund temples and orphanages. He is praised as a man of the people. But his tastes are violent. He treats pain as pedagogy, claiming that suffering teaches discipline. You once saw him make a boy sing through tears. He clapped when the song ended. Most disturbing of all is Sophist, a philosopher known for his writings on ethics. He preaches moderation, piety, and respect for the natural order. But in the shadows, he becomes something else entirely, a predator, with a gift for twisting logic into excuse. Slaves have no souls, he once said, while fastening restraints to a boy's wrists. They are like instruments, beautiful when properly tuned. No one argues, no one resists. And that's the horror. These are not men acting from ignorance. They are brilliant minds, fully aware, choosing to use their brilliance to justify the unspeakable. They do not see you as a contradiction to their values. They see you as beneath them, outside the moral code that binds real men. You are not a citizen, not a person, not a question worth asking. And so their violence wears the mask of virtue, their sadism cloaked in philosophy. It is not ignorance that built this system. It is intention. Civilization here does not mean compassion. It means control, polished, articulate, and admired by all. Somewhere along the way, something inside you breaks, not with a scream or a final blow, but with a quiet resignation so complete it almost feels like peace. You no longer flinch when touched. You no longer wince at cruel words. You respond before commands are spoken, anticipate moods, read gestures with the precision of a trained dog, and they reward you for it. Demetrius begins to trust you with tasks beyond service. You are given better clothes, warmer meals, a cell with a small window that lets in a sliver of moonlight. Other slaves look at you differently now, some with envy, others with sadness, because they recognize what you've become, the perfect servant. Not because you are obedient, but because you no longer think of yourself as anything else. You perform your duties like a shadow moving across the wall, silent, precise, invisible. And still a part of you watches, detached, observing yourself as if from a distance. You see the boy you were walking barefoot through olive groves, chasing goats, laughing under the sun. He's a ghost now. You don't feel his grief anymore, just his absence. The house is pleased. Lysander is pleased. Demetrius calls you dependable. You're even taken to the slave market to assist with new purchases, a shining example of what proper training can produce. That's where it happens. A boy no older than 13 is brought out, dark hair, lean frame, terrified eyes. He looks like you, or rather like who you used to be. Something shifts. A memory crashes through the numbness, your father's laugh, your mother's bread, the feel of wind on your face. You stagger. Demetrius grabs your arm. "You ill?" he asks, eyes narrowing. You nod. It's the heat. But the truth is harder to say. For the first time in years you felt something. Not hope, not pain. Just recognition that the boy you used to be mattered, that he existed, and maybe in some way he still does. The new boy is bought by another master. You won't see him again. But for days afterward he haunts your thoughts, slips into your dreams, interrupts your carefully constructed silence. For the first time in a long time, you're not afraid of remembering. You're afraid of forgetting, because forgetting is how they win. And you're not ready to let them have everything. The symposium that breaks you again is quieter than the others. No drunken laughter, no wild games, just a circle of older men, their robes crisp, their voices low, discussing justice and the ideal state. You move among them unnoticed, pouring wine with the grace you've perfected. You listen because you've learned that knowledge can be protection. But tonight the words cut deeper than any whip. One man speaks of virtue, how it might be taught, how it might be born. Another offers a theory. Some souls, he says, are made for freedom, others for servitude. It's not cruelty, he insists. It's nature. Some people, he says, calmly lack the rational capacity for self-rule. Slavery for them is not degradation. It is structure. It is purpose. Heads nod. Cups clink. Someone quotes Aristotle. Another praises the clarity of the argument. You stand behind one of them, still as marble wine pitcher trembling in your hands. They speak as if you are not there, and in their minds you aren't. Your furniture useful, silent, designed to serve. They do not flinch at their own hypocrisy. They debate morality while your scars are still healing. They ponder virtue while their hands have destroyed it. And the worst part is that they believe themselves good, enlightened, civilized. You realize in that moment something terrifying. It is not ignorance that allows evil to flourish. It is reason. It is brilliance turned inward, used not to build justice, but to excuse cruelty. These men could have saved you. Instead, they've constructed a world where your suffering proves their superiority. You see it now, how ideas become weapons, how logic becomes a leash. They are not monsters in the traditional sense. They do not scream or froth at the mouth. They quote Plato while they destroy boys. They speak of the soul while crushing yours. You leave that night not with more pain, but with more clarity. You understand that the system is not a mistake. It is the product of deliberate choices made by men who knew exactly what they were doing. And suddenly the question that has haunted you for years shifts. It's no longer, why is this happening to me? But how many others are suffering because no one is willing to look beyond the beauty of the words? By your 3rd year in the house, you are no longer a boy. Not in spirit, not in flesh. You move like a ghost, silent, efficient, expected. You do not cry. You do not flinch. You do not hope. The others see you as both warning and example. You are what happens when survival wins. When the soul gives up the fight, but the body keeps going. New slaves arrive, often fresh faces, wide eyes, trembling hands. You know which ones will break quickly. You know which ones will try to run and fail. You don't warn them, not because you're cruel, but because it wouldn't matter. No one listens to ghosts. Your cell is quiet at night. Sometimes you sit near the small window staring up at the stars. You remember staring at those same constellations as a child lying beside your brothers on the roof of your family's house. You try to picture their faces now, but they blur. The longer you survive, the further away your past drifts. What remains is routine. Pour the wine, wash the linens, smile when asked, disappear when not. Your thoughts become whispers. You think in silence. You live in the gaps between commands. There's peace in numbness, cold but predictable. Marcus still serves slower now, one shoulder permanently damaged. Alexios rarely speaks anymore. Philemon has become a favorite, and that terrifies you more than anything, because you see the price it's costing him. You've learned that even small comforts come at the cost of self-erasure. A better blanket, a warmer meal, less bruising, more emptiness. The house itself begins to feel alive, an organism that consumes the spirit and rewards the hollow. The walls listen. The stairs remember. The mosaics on the ceiling smile while boys weep below. Some nights a new slave will whisper their real name before falling asleep. You never respond. Names are dangerous. They tether you to a life that can no longer protect you. They give you something to lose. And in this place, the key to survival is to own nothing, not even yourself. But still, in rare moments, something flickers. A scent, a song, a memory, and you feel the ache of being alive again, if only for a second. It hurts more than the beatings, because it reminds you of what you were, and what you're not allowed to be anymore. You don't notice the change at first, but one day Lysander's guests barely glance at you. Their eyes move to newer boys, fresher faces, tighter skin, unbroken spirits. You are no longer exotic, no longer exciting. You have become routine, and in this house, routine is a death sentence. Demetrius summons you in the morning, his tone unusually formal. You're being reassigned, he says, not punished, not rewarded, just moved. The minds need bodies. You'll be useful there. He says it the way one might speak about tools, replacing a dull blade with a sharper one. You don't react. There is no panic, no protest, only the dull weight of inevitability. The mines are a place everyone fears. Even the cruelest guests speak of them with a shiver. You've seen slaves come from them thin as bones, coughing blood eyes like cracked glass. You know what it means. You're not being transferred. You're being discarded. Later that night, as you sit in your cell for what you suspect is the last time Marcus appears at your door, he says nothing at first, just presses something into your palm. A shard of metal crudely sharpened, a lockpick, or a weapon, or a way out. He doesn't explain. He doesn't need to. His eyes say everything. You still have a choice. That night you lie awake, staring at the stone ceiling. You could run. You could fight. You could take your own life, end it on your terms. But the risk, the pain, the futility. You've seen what happens to those who try, but you've also seen what happens to those who surrender everything. You turn the shard over in your fingers. Cold, sharp, real. You could use it, or you could pass it on. Before dawn, you make your decision. You hide the shard beneath the floor where another slave might one day find it. Because even if you have no hope left, someone else might. And maybe that's enough. When the guards arrive to chain you for transport, you do not resist. You do not speak. You walk out of the only home you've known in years, willingly, silently, with nothing left to protect but the memory of the boy you once were, and the tiniest, most fragile idea that your story might still matter. Even in the dark, the road to the mines winds through the countryside like a cruel reminder of everything you've lost. Olive groves stretch across the hills. Mountain streams glisten under sunlight. The scent of pine and wildflowers stirs something buried so deep you almost forget its grief. You remember chasing goats as a child, splashing in creeks, stealing fruit from neighbors' trees. The guards see only silence in your eyes, but inside you are mourning quietly, privately, the person who once belonged to this land. You don't try to escape. The chains are too tight, the terrain too open. But more than that, you know how it ends. You've seen it in others, the desperate ones, the bold ones, the hopeful ones. They always return broken if they return at all. The mine is a mouth in the mountains, black and hungry. It swallows you with no ceremony. The air inside is hot and wet, with dust, thick enough to choke. Your lungs burn from the first hour. The light is dim, the tunnel's tight. The walls groan with every breath threatening collapse at any moment. There are no overseers with whips here, only the weight of impossible quotas and the silence of exhaustion. But something unexpected exists in this final circle of hell community. The slaves here are different. Broken, yes, but bound together. They share food when they can. They whisper names of lost siblings, stories of homes that no longer exist. They help each other through the hardest days, lifting bodies too weak to stand, singing old songs in forbidden languages, just low enough not to echo. You become part of it. Not because you're strong, but because you're still breathing. You find yourself telling your story haltingly at first, then with more strength. They listen. And in that act of listening, something sacred happens. Witness. They speak your name. They remember it. In this place where nothing is supposed to last, your story lives, and so do theirs. No historians will record your pain. No statues will be carved in your honor. But here under the earth, among the forgotten and the discarded, your humanity is not erased. It is spoken aloud, quietly, tenderly, like a prayer made of ash and breath. You are dying, but you are not invisible, not here, not anymore. You die without ceremony, no final words, no clean goodbye. One morning your lungs simply refuse to draw in another breath. The dust, the labor, the weight of unhealed wounds, your body surrenders where your spirit did long ago. The others wrap you in cloth and lay you near the mine's edge. There will be no grave, no marker, but they remember your name. They whisper it to one another like a vow. And in a world built to erase you, that alone is a quiet kind of justice. Yet your death is not the end, because your story, your life, your pain, your silence echoes in ways no philosopher could predict. It exposes the rot beneath the marble, the blood behind the beauty. The same civilization that built statues of gods used children for pleasure. The same minds that shaped democracy justified slavery with reason. This wasn't contradiction. It was design. The brilliance of Athens did not exist in spite of the suffering it depended on it. The leisure to debate virtue came from the labor of those who had none. The beauty of the art was carved into stone by hands that had lost all softness. You see it now, clearly, and you want others to see it too, because the past is not past. The same mechanisms persist. Today we wear different clothes. We speak different languages, but we still build comfort on the backs of the vulnerable. We praise corporations for innovation while ignoring the children who stitch our clothing in hidden rooms. We celebrate progress while profiting from systems we refuse to look at. We post quotes about empathy and virtue while scrolling past real suffering because it feels too heavy. Our cities shine, but the shadows remain. And what we call civilization is still too often a carefully arranged mask for cruelty. The question isn't whether these things happen. They do, every day. The question is whether we will keep pretending they don't, whether we will keep reciting noble ideals while benefiting from silent systemic suffering. You died in a mine nameless in history, but your story survives. Not because someone carved it in stone, but because someone listened. And now someone else must decide what to do with the truth, because every civilization has its price, and someone always is made to pay it. Your name is gone from the records. No inscription bears it. No scroll preserves it. But still you exist, not in the halls of official memory, but in the quiet spaces where truth survives despite silence. Somewhere a boy not unlike you lies awake in a different kind of cage, held by a different kind of system, whispering questions no one wants to answer. Why me? What did I do? Does anyone see this? And in that moment, your story finds breath again. Because this was never just about ancient Greece. It was never only a past tragedy. It is a mirror, a warning, a pattern repeating itself through centuries, different names, different justifications, but the same foundation, pain for profit. Today's symposiums are boardrooms and private chat rooms. Today's overseers wear suits. They trade not in silver coins, but in algorithms, pharmaceuticals, cheap labor, and influence. Children still disappear into sweatshops, into screens, into wars no one reports. Their cries are still ignored. Their dignity still stolen. And like the men who once quoted Aristotle while destroying lives, we too wrap our complicity in beautiful language. We say efficiency, free market progress. We convince ourselves that suffering is far away abstract someone else's problem. But it isn't. It never was. You were called a slave. Today they are called undocumented runaways at risk. But their humanity is no less real, and our responsibility no less urgent. Because if civilization is to mean anything at all, it must start by facing what it was built upon. The marble halls still stand. Tourists walk them every day. They marvel at the symmetry, the sculptures, the wisdom etched in stone. Few ever ask who paid for this. Few wonder what voices were silenced to make the philosophers audible. Fewer still dare to look at our own time and ask, what echoes will we leave? But someone must. Because stories like yours do not die. They wait, in the shadows, in the questions we avoid, in the faces we choose not to see. And if we are brave enough to listen, to truly listen, they can awaken something long buried in us, not guilt, but conscience, not shame, but responsibility, not silence, but witness. You were never just one boy. You were the truth beneath the myth, the cost behind the glory, the voice that will not be forgotten. And now, your voice is ours. You were never carved into stone, never honored with garlands or gold, but your story remains the thread of truth running beneath the marble myths we admire. You were the silence behind the speeches, the shadow behind the statues, the cost no one wanted to calculate. And yet, here you are, still speaking, through time, through pain, through every whispered name that was never supposed to be remembered. This story is not just yours. It is a mirror held up to all of us, because every generation builds something, an empire, a system, a culture, and every one of them decides who will bear the weight. The question is never whether someone suffers. The question is, who? And will we care today? Somewhere in the world, another child is being forgotten so that someone else can feel powerful or comfortable or entertained. If we let your memory fade, we let it happen again. But if we carry your voice forward into policy, into art, into conversation, into courage, then your life was not erased. It was transformed into a warning, a responsibility, a seed of change. You may have died beneath the earth, but now above it your story is awake, and we are listening.